earning attorney referral together, right? So for those who don't know me or haven't met me before, my name is John Fraker. I am an estate planning attorney in the Bay Area of Northern California. And my job for the last 20 years is to help families stay out of probate, oddly enough, right? So in our area, in my market, as I was telling Nina and I had a good talk the other day about some client issues that she was having. And I said, probably since 1999, 2000, when I started my career, it's actually malpractice for an attorney or pretty close to it in the Bay Area or Northern California to prepare a will and not a trust for a client. I would have to be extremely sure that they were not greater than maybe 160,000 in net worth, or do a small estate affidavit. I would not knowingly do that for somebody with a standard net worth in the Bay Area where they own a house, right? Because probate in California, we've talked about this multiple times. Bill Gross talks about this a lot in his program and his trainings. Probate in California is just plain broken, right? So when I started my career, I think the fastest I've ever opened and shut a probate from beginning to end was about 6 to 7 months. California has a 4-month, it's called the statutory notice period in the middle, where they have to notify creditors. You have to give creditors 4 months to make their claims before you can say, nope, we're shutting the door on all creditor claims. You're not allowed to submit anything anymore. So that's built into our probate code. Not every state has that. And that's a good question when you're meeting with attorneys. Try to get a handle on the process in your state.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you an example. I closed 2 probates in March of this year that I actually filed the paperwork in about September of last year. So in the beginning of my career, I opened and shut a probate in 6 to 7 months. And the last year, it took me 6 months to close a probate that was already done. And I submitted the paperwork and it was sitting on their desk. And I got a hearing date 6 months out. So all that to say, it's really disadvantageous for attorneys in my state, my area, to allow their clients to go to probate. So in the probate process, I know that's the focus of all our trainings, probate mastery, but there's an entire universe around that besides just good old fashioned probate. In my industry, I spend more time with my clients on trust administration, administering large and complicated trusts, multiple beneficiary trusts, trusts that have business assets, trusts that have multiple real estate holdings, commercial property, all that good stuff. Trusts where you have beneficiaries fighting for control, all these good things. So it's not like our court systems are bored or empty. There's plenty of business, even if it's not all probate. The court system is still, it's still chock full. Frankly, it's up to the breaking point. That's why it takes so long to close a case. So, when you're building relationships with the attorneys, picking their brain on how the probate process works, what type of business they're looking for. When we did the 3 attorney panel, each of us talked about our own specialty, the way that we work with clients, what type of business we're looking for. But that's just an excellent way to get started in building those relationships with the attorneys that you guys are networking with. What type of business are they even looking for? Right. And I've talked about this. My first phone call and training with Chad, back when he was with all the leads, was, I think it was about 3 years ago. And I said this then, even if you can't send them probate business, somebody who needs a living trust. Somebody who needs healthcare powers of attorney and so forth, right? So I don't want people to get so pigeonholed into thinking probate is the only way that you can work with attorneys. It isn't. And so that's my strong recommendation, is always find out who you're working with, what their law firm is like, what their practice is like, what's a good client for them, what's a bad client for them, right? My number one criteria for a client is somebody who's motivated to get their plan done, right? From the very first seminar I ever gave, even before I started my own law firm, I did a seminar for another law firm, and the number one slide is, we're helping clients overcome their natural tendency to procrastinate, right, in setting up their estate plan. You can offer them special deals. You can walk them through their questionnaire by hand. There's a million different things that you can do with your clients, and they're still just going to procrastinate. So the best client for me is somebody who's fired up, ready, motivated to take action to protect their family via a trust or in the administrative process to get things wrapped up and preserve that family harmony. That's something that I, strongly recommend each of you get a handle on. So let me go to some of the questions. Let's see. Does anybody have any questions? I see a bunch of raised hands. Brian, do you want to unmute? Let's see.
Yes, I will unmute. So John, thanks for doing this for us. My question for you. So I've got my first lunch with a lawyer next week, or an attorney next week. I mean, you just gave two great questions. What's a good client for you? What's a bad? Who do you not want me to send to you? So those are two great. But we were talking in the class previously with Chad. He said there could be some things that you could offer your attorneys that kind of like just information. You're talking about real estate valuation, security review, those kinds of things. Is there something that you're like, oh my gosh, this is absolute junk mail. I don't need this from you. Or is there something that you're like, you know what, if you were able to send me this once a month, once every 2 weeks, once every 6 months, whatever it is, that's what I need in order to have better conversations with my clients. Is there anything like that you have received, or you could say, hey, Brian, this is really kind of like a game changer with the agents that I work with?
Yeah. One of the things I would say, I mean, there's no silver bullet. I mean, for me, one thing that I need daily in my job, and I get it via my relationships with title companies, is grant deeds for the client's house to put it into their trust, right? Nobody seems to ever know where that is. Nobody seems to know. None of the clients seem to know how that sucker works. Sorry, I'm fiddling with my camera. So it's really important that you kind of have a handle on that. For me, it's no silver bullets. Like I've said in the prior trainings, most important thing to me is I want to know that the realtor or the financial planner or the CPA is a professional like myself that always puts the client first. And that's not necessarily something you can prove to somebody. It's just something you build in that relationship over time. You talk about that in everything that you say, do, and breathe. Is I'm not in it for the commission. I'm in it for what's right for the client. So that would be my number one thing. And then, as Chad's talked about in the past, finding ways of getting testimonials from past clients or even other attorneys. And, to testify to the fact that you are a professional and that they're not going to be disappointed in sending you business. Right.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Alrighty. Alex, you got your hand raised.
Okay. Yes. Here, I'll start the video. My question is, as an attorney, when you are dealing with property that needs to be liquidated, okay, when a lot of investors are contacting the attorneys that I know and other attorneys in the estate field and trying to get them to sell the property to the investor and soliciting them.
Right.
So my question is, twofold. Number one, how do you go about, as you're the attorney, making the decision whether to bring it to the attention of a realtor that you know or an investor? And then the second part of that question is, what can we do to sort of put our thumb on the scale or change their decision making so that even if they need a quick close or even if they need to sell the property quickly, all cash offer, how do we get them to call us instead of the investor? Okay.
As a realtor, I mean, if you are a realtor and you're competing with cash buyers, then you need to up your cash buyer list, right?
Right.
I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. Our real estate market is not like anyone else in the country. It never has been, and it probably never will be. Bill and I talk about that all the time. Talk about it with Renee, and so I would just say in our market, everybody wants a fixer, right? Everybody wants a deal because it's the most expensive housing market in the country.
Right. Everybody wants a deal in my neighborhood. Everybody.
Right. And and I get hit up by realtors, people I used to know, people I used to work in different brokerages. I'm on their list, and they text me. They're like, "Hey, do you have anything?" If I have no relationship with you, don't text me. And even if I do, don't text me. Right? Find a way of being in front of me to work on a client matter together, or just pick up the phone and call me. Right? Those people are all leading with their handout, right? They're not leading with what they can do for me. They're all in it for themselves, and it comes across. And it's I get it. Everybody hates cold calling. Everybody hates the long, painstaking relationship building. But there's no way around it in our industry. If you want good, qualified attorneys and other professionals sending you business, right? There's no shortcuts to that. Everybody wants to do the thing where they, spam text 50,000 attorneys and one of them doesn't tell them to go to hell. And then they get a piece of business and they didn't have to lift a finger for it. And then they brag about that to their friends, right? That's not us. That's not this program. That's not how I would ever do business. So I would just strongly encourage you. You have to build the relationships up front. You have to let them know how you can solve problems. It's all about problem solving. I gave the example in my very first training with Chad. We had a probate that was scheduled to close on a Friday. The deal to sell the house fell apart on Monday. Without that cash, there was no money to give the beneficiaries. There's no money to pay my fees. There's no money to pay the executors' fees. There's no money to pay the creditors. The whole thing collapses, right?
Mhm.
So on Monday, the entire probate was dead in the water. The realtor at that time came forward, had a cash buyer. And again, in our market, a cash buyer is $700,000, $800,000, right? Somebody ready to go, locked and loaded. And he saved the deal and everybody got paid and the court was happy because they got this off their plate. And the beneficiaries were thrilled because other than that, we would have been, kicked out 3, 4, 5 months, right? So those are the kind of stuff that we talk about. Being a Swiss Army knife, being a person who has a relationship with the attorney, being a valued resource to them to solve problems for the attorneys, problems for their clients, right? When you're dealing with a decedent's property, you're going to have the big problem. Honestly, is that the property is usually in not great repair, right?
Absolutely. Yes,
Right?
absolutely.
Depending on how many owners they've had, right? If it's a condo for somebody who's only been there a couple of years, not that big a problem. In the senior 55 plus community, not that big a problem. But I have clients who live in their house 50, 60 years, deferred maintenance, other problems, major issues, right? So my brokerage, Keller Williams, like EXP, and I think a couple other programs, most of the brokerages, the main ones now, have something where they will front the money up to a certain amount for repairs with the listing contract, right? And so we had a client that they had lived in, the parents had lived in their house 60 years. It's in one of the top Silicon Valley zip codes. But it was not going to command top dollar. It just wasn't up to snuff. So we had to come in there, spend the money, front the money, get the work done, get that sucker prepared for market. And it worked, right? We sold it for 800,000 over list. But that's an example of being there to solve problems. In that case, I was, the realtor and the attorney, but that's a problem that was solved, right? So if you're a brokerage, if you're a realtor and you have a brokerage, you want to find out what money they have available to front people. And that's the sort of thing that you want to, that's the sort of thing you want to figure out.
Okay.
I think, folks, if you're not asking a question, could you please mute yourself? That would be outstanding. Sorry, I just had a little bit of feedback there. Nina, you got your hands up.
I do. Hi. So this is in part comment, kind of what I think, what a light bulb around lead gen for agents, as well as then bringing the referrals to the attorneys. And I mean, I think you pretty much have said it, as well as attorneys I've talked to, that the business they really do want is that steady business of planning estate administration. The probate is, there's a retainer fee, but you're waiting those 2 years in California. And then when you have issues like I had, what I talked to you about the other day, it's just that they get convoluted. With that said, I've started doing some video. I'm going to be doing more video. And my videos, the messages I'm sending in my videos is around the pain of probate.
Right.
The problems of probate, these horror stories that I'm hearing from people who I've just reached out to because they're posting in other groups and they're telling they're from another state, maybe, whatever, but
yep.
I wanted their stories because that story sends the message to the people I'm calling who aren't in probate. They're just a standard residential client.
Yep.
and telling them, you know, I am a specialist in that, but I also do retail. And if you're not prepared to sell, that's fine, but I'd like to be a resource for you as an agent. And by the way, why isn't your property in a trust? Why don't you have an estate plan? You know, or something to that effect.
Yep.
And that just kind of like the light bulb kind of, they don't even realize, what are you talking about? You know, and then that opens that conversation. You know, what I deal with are a lot of horror stories and clients who have challenges of the pain of probate.
Right.
And avoid that. And so then it gives an opportunity, showing that value, because you mentioned the solutions. And I tell you, I'm an investor too, by the way, Alex. I don't know if you're in California, but I'm buying here in California up to 1.3 million all cash. So there you go. But my point is that if you have those solutions, whatever they are, you're just coming at it from a solution standpoint. Now you have this lead that you've talked to, who you've presented something that they really may not have been thinking of fully, because you have a context of, I'm going to send you a link to a video I did about this client I spoke to, who really had a horrible experience because of probate. And she thought a POA on his deathbed was going to give her the authority to do what she needed to do. No understanding. So with that conversation, I think from there, John, I guess over the question comment.
Sorry about
Approach, I guess, is an approach, a totally different approach of talking to these leads.
Nina, hold on for 1 second. If you could just unmute yourself. I had to mute the group. So if you could just unmute yourself.
Got it.
There we are.
I'll be done soon. I know I get long-winded.
No, not a problem. I just want to make sure we're hearing you and not the feedback.
But my point is that I think there's an opportunity there in how we're approaching leads. These are like pre-probates that I'm talking about, right? People, in other words, a lot of the leads, like your current PR, you have leads who are in probate, you got the probate list. They have heirs who are about to get a bunch of money.
Yep.
Those heirs are our attorney referrals to open up estate planning.
Absolutely.
So you see, so I think that there's a whole light bulb going on here for me around where these referrals are going to come from.
Yeah, that's great.
To my attorneys, and to, of course, like you said, the value, because I'm all about, hey, if I can help somebody, I can help them. The woman I talked to you about, I'm not making any money from her, but I wanted to help her. So
yeah,
that's just my comment on kind of.
So what Nina is saying, stories sell, right? Because what you're doing when you give, whether you're doing it in YouTube, whether you're doing it on video that you put on your website, whether you do seminars, when you tell stories about estate planning disasters or whatnot, you're allowing them to enter into the story. You're not lecturing them. You're allowing them to place themselves in the story and see what that would look like if that happened to them. Let them think it through. That's a much better way of communicating than just droning on. And I'll give you a revelation I had. This is going back 10 to 12 years ago. I totally changed my estate planning 101 living trust seminar. It was about 10 plus years ago. And I refined it. Every time I refine it, I expand on this one thing. The back 60% of my seminar is called, how much is all this going to cost? Right? I run them through the options, working with a full service law firm, most expensive. But then, the do-it-yourself group, the people who go to a trust mill, the people who mean to get around to it and never do, right? And then I lay out on a chart, here's the most expensive up front, but here is potentially unlimited liability on the back end, right? And then after that, I give them, anywhere 5 to 7 case studies of cases not ripped out of a book, certainly not headlines. I don't like that at all. People love talking about, famous wills or trust for famous celebrities, and people check out. They're like, well, that's a problem for the rich. So I give them examples of rank and file people that we've helped their family get through a very difficult time. But as I say time and again, what a living trust or what a estate plan costs on the front end is not the true value of what it costs. The back end, what you pay to get out of it. That's really that's the final cost. I know a lot of people that spent nothing up front, $500, and left themselves with a 6-figure mess on the back end, legal fees, court fees, delays, families torn apart. So I really applaud you on that. I encourage you to do more of it. Put it on your website, do a podcast, webcast, whatever you want, so that people can see this is happening to rank and file people. And going back to my going back to my earlier comment, right? People who are motivated to work with me are my best clients. My number one best client are the people who had an estate planning disaster in their family because their parents skimped on their plan or didn't get it done or didn't do it at all, right? And they went through the disaster of seeing how bad it is when you don't have it done. They walk in my office, they're like, tell me where to sign. Here's the check. Here's your questionnaire. They get it back to me and they're out with a trust in a week, right? Because they are on fire. So
to get it done. I know Sherry's got a question. I don't want, and others do. I just wanted to follow up on the cost of estate plan, creating an estate plan, estate administration, because, and I know it depends on the attorney, but I know for the African-American demographic, which is my 90% of my clients, one market area in my area that has the highest number of probates per year for at least the 5 years, if not longer.
Yep.
Is African American. And everyone I've talked to who said, well, I was going to do it, but it costs so much.
Right.
Their issue is the cost of why they don't do it. But then they say on the phone in that same, but man, I wish I did, because I wish I didn't. I wouldn't want to have to go wish this on anybody.
Yep.
What would you say is an average expectation of cost? And you said it before in framing how it costs them less on the back end if they just do it now.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, whenever I talk cost, I always give them a guesstimate of what probate would cost them, right? And that's the easy stuff to calculate, right? So before I get into a living trust fee, I give them the probate fee, and then I give them, and in the Bay Area, it's always horrific. It's always $20,000 to $40,000, right? In 2 years of your life,
And it's the same for LA
or
County.
your family ripped apart, right?
Yeah.
Leon, my business partner, he started his practice before we joined forces and started our partnership. That was his primary market. He's from Los Angeles. Well, he was born in Alabama, but his parents live in Southern California. And he was seeing a lot of his parents' friends go off to trust mill seminars and wind up being sold annuities, being sold financial products that were devastating to their family finances. And then they get a cookie cutter trust that's ripped out of a book that's not any better than a trust mill. And it's really just financial elder abuse, right? For the unsophisticated client who thinks they're getting an estate planning seminar. They get a rubber chicken dinner, right? But the whole point, it's like a timeshare presentation, right? You leave with a trust, but really what you're there to do is to buy their annuities or to buy their garbage financial products. And I've seen some really, really terrible ones. I had one client who had their parents wandered off to one of the seminars. They had an annuity that had a 10-year lockup period, which meant if you took your money out of it in a decade, the penalty was 10 to 15% of the total value. So it was really bad. There was like a 6-month window where you could take it out at no cost in the 50-year or whatever. And for all that misery, the market performance was not any better than basically cash. But anyhow, I'm going a little bit off track. So I'm going to get to some other questions. Thank you, Nina. You can always call and text me and we can always catch up. So Sherry, you got a question? Sherry Lund?
I do. First, I have to say, thank you for your time. I really appreciate you doing this. Sure. Second, I have to say, did you just say rubber chicken dinner?
That's what I call them. Yeah.
It cracks me up. I've never heard that phrase before.
Really? Oh man. So here's the thing. I was my undergrad, I was a political science major. Rubber chicken dinner is what they call when the politician wants to do a fundraiser and everybody gets the same schlock and it tastes like garbage because you're there to raise money for the politician, for the candidate. Yeah. It doesn't matter if the speaker was, I attended a rubber chicken dinner and the speaker was Bill Clinton, right? When he was president of the United States. It was $1,000 to eat their plastic chicken. So that's where the saying comes from. The rubber chicken dinner it's just garbage because you're there in politics. You're there to raise money for the candidate. A rubber chicken dinner in finance and these other scams is to separate you from your money, like the timeshares, right? There's literally no difference between the timeshare crap and the people being sold annuities, except at least with the timeshare, while you're being robbed, you can visit Hawaii once a decade or whatever, right? But some of these annuities are just downright criminal.
Oh, well, that got a chuckle. That was worth coming on the call for.
I forgot not everybody uses that phrase.
It's awesome. Okay, so I've talked to 4 attorneys and
Awesome.
it is awesome, except it's also confusing because they all have a different approach to how they want to do estate planning.
Yep.
One says you need to do a trust. One says a trust with a pour over will. Another one says you only need a trust if you have small children. Like, it's really confusing. And so
What state are you in?
Texas.
Yeah. And again, I should have started off with this. My legal disclaimer is always, I don't give legal advice, certainly
Right.
not over YouTube or in this
Yeah.
format, nor do I speak outside of California. I'm licensed here, not in Texas, anywhere else. Right. Yeah. Attorneys everywhere have their own ways of doing business, right? They all have
Yeah.
their preferred ways of, and I don't really know there's a shortcut around that. It's just getting to know them and getting to know why they think that way, what they've seen good and bad from that. Right. Attorneys serve different clientele, like, what's the word? Like different economic strata of clients, right? You get some who are serving the mass affluent, right? 100 to 500,000 net worth. You get attorneys who specialize in only $1 million and up. You get attorneys who specialize in Medicaid, Medicare planning. You get attorneys who specialize in young couples who are just getting started in life, who have new kids. So yeah, find out about their practice. Use that as an opportunity to ask them more about their practice and why they think that way and what their motivation is. You are never going to come up with a consensus answer. You could ask 100, you could ask 500 California attorneys, and they'll all give you their own prejudices. It's a little more cut and dry with the avoid probate because it's been that way for so long in California that our probate system is 5 to 10 times more expensive. So in other states, like Chad talks about this all the time, he's in Virginia, or he's gone to the courts there, and you walk in, it's whole thing is 5 weeks, right? You talk to the clerk, they tell you what to do, and you're in and out in 5 weeks, right? So a living trust for them is not quite as cut and dry as it is here, where if you try to get the clerk on the phone, they'll yell at you because they don't want to talk to you at all. But yeah, I mean, that's just an opportunity for you to dive deeper with them into why they feel that way.
Right.
Right. Because it's based on something, right?
Right.
It might just be their prejudice, but it's probably also what's right for the majority of their clients. So that'll tell you a lot about the type of clients they're serving.
Yeah, that's a really good point. When I met one on Monday and I asked her that, I said, I'm getting these conflicting things. I wonder why these, why do you choose that? And why would they choose that? She looked at me like deer in the headlights kind of thing. Like, I don't know why they would choose that.
Yeah.
And I think that was her honest answer. So I'm thinking, when I'm trying to, I need to listen to them and try to feel them out. But also when I'm finding my pre-probate, like Nina was talking about, talking to people, referrals to send to them, I need to figure out where they're at. I mean, it's quite a bit of figuring out on my part to see who I can refer them to and then do it with open hands and saying, now you make the final choice. Here's a couple of names maybe that you might want to talk to.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And that's the thing, is that the attorneys specialize, and more importantly, we're required to specialize. In other words, state bar, and this is true in every state. In California, state bar says, if you're an attorney, you take on representation, you're only allowed to represent someone if you can do it competently, right? If you can do it at the level of an expert. If you can't, your job is to associate another attorney, right? So if I represent a small business and I do the corporate work for them to get their company off the ground, and they have intellectual property, copyright needs, they may have real estate needs. If I'm not a specialist, I have to sub that out, right? So a lot of this is you're finding out that attorneys have their own subspecialties, even in estate planning, right?
right.
In the pre-probate, you guys need to start meeting elder law attorneys, not just probate, not just living trust attorneys, but elder law attorneys, attorneys who specialize in Medicaid, or attorneys who specialize in special needs trust, things like that, right? Because that's a whole other opportunity, right, for a business. It's not one size fits all for you, and it's not one size fits all for their practice.
Right. Thanks, John. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All righty. Who else? John Holtzfield. You got a question?
Yes, John.
How you doing?
Thank you. Good. How about yourself?
Doing great, thanks. Having
Good.
fun.
Good. Well, thank you for taking the time to do all this.
Yeah.
The question I have is, Chad talks a lot in the EARN course about administrative drag, and then you also mentioned about solving problems. And you've given some examples of that,
Yep.
being that Swiss Army knife. What if I was to go in and meet with an attorney? What are types of problems I could tell him I would solve? Does that mean bringing in, the legal on all the properties? What does that all mean? What are problems?
Yeah.
What specifics are you
Well,
talking about?
Yeah, ultimately, that's something that you need to get from them. Each attorney is going to have their own way of practicing law, their own specialty, and their own challenges, right? That's your opportunity to quiz them. I can tell you what works for me, but I'm one attorney, right? So the people that you're meeting with in your area, in whatever market you're in, they have their own challenges, right? Even amongst the 3 attorneys in our panel, we all practice law slightly differently, right? I'm almost totally virtual because I don't like carrying overhead. The reason I hate carrying overhead, staff salaries, and square footage is because I ran my law firm during the 5 years of the recession, 2008 to 2012, 13, right? And I had months there where I was locked into long-term real estate contracts that was bleeding me dry because people were so terrified about what was happening in the world financially that they would just shut down. And so I travel light. The virtual world suits me. It suits my clients. I serve people throughout Northern California and even Southern California because now I don't want to make light of the pandemic, but the familiarity with Zoom, the familiarity with remote work, people are a lot more versed in that and accepting of that today than they were 5 years ago.
Mhm.
And so I use that to my client's advantage that I'm able to help more people along a broader spectrum. But that's the thing is you have to know what each attorney's challenge is, and help them meet it, right? They may need help finding staff, right? And then you may know somebody who needs a job, or you may know how to connect them with a resource in that area, right? They may suck at marketing and they may tell you they're good, but they may not. So you can help, do what Bill Gross does, right? Do some interviews of them, let them put it on their website. It's free. It costs you nothing other than the equipment, right? YouTube is free. It's free to produce it. You give it to them. Law of reciprocity, they're going to want to think about you in the future. It doesn't mean you do one video and the next 5 houses they have to sell, they're going to send to you, but it's a great way to open the door with people, right? You're leading with service. You're leading with something that you can do that costs you almost nothing other than your time, right? It's the same thing they teach new realtors. When you have more time than money, you door knock, right? When you have more money than time, then you send out flyers and you send out the big mail pieces. In the Bay Area, I know attorneys who I know realtors who drop $20,000 to $40,000 a month in mail. That's not something you would tell a rookie to do. They would just quit on the spot, right?
Right.
So in the beginning, they door knock and they do things, seminars, they do cheap and easy ways. Same thing for you when you're building your relationships with attorneys. Start simple, start cheap. Be generous with your time, and people will remember that, right? It costs you next to nothing to do what Bill does. No offense to Bill, it's a finished and wonderful product, but you don't need to do all the extra costs in that. You're helping someone grow their business. They're going to remember you, right?
Sure.
So it doesn't need to be a Ferrari, a Ford or a Chevy will get you where you're going to go, right? In that.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Lynette. Action Jackson, Lynette. Lynette, you have to unmute yourself, please.
Thank you. Sorry, my computer decided to restart, so I'm on my phone. Question for you. I haven't,
Yes.
and I have not been through the whole course yet, but do you have any recommendations for questions that might be pertinent to ask attorneys? So for instance, I'm always going to be about the client, so I'm going to ask specific questions. I just had a probate close where I learned from my client that the lawyer or the attorney charged him $150 because of an email communication I had with the attorney. And I was like, because I reached out. I said, hey, we're closing on this day. Is there anything else you need from me? Do you need me to send over to sell? Yeah, I'm trying to come from a
Yeah.
place. What can I help you
Hourly,
guys?
the joys of hourly billing, right?
And then he's like, and so of course my client got pissed because he was like, you don't need to be talking to them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's the joy of hourly billing. I had
Right.
the reason I'm laughing so much is I had that happen to me, and it was my dad's attorney. I don't do my parents' living trust or estate plan. I never
Right.
have. So their attorney was a friend of theirs from church. Really nice guy. This is like more than 15 years ago. But everything for him was an hourly bill. And back then I was doing financial planning, and my dad was getting a life insurance trust set up to keep it out of your estate for estate tax purposes.
Mhm.
And, back in the first decade of my practice, other than a living trust, life insurance trust was like 1A, 1B for what I do for my clients. And so, my dad, his attorney's doing the drafting on that. I'm helping on the insurance piece and the investments and all that. And I just called his attorney and said, hey, blah, 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 blah. And then my dad got a bill. And this is when I was still in Los Angeles. And my dad picked up the phone and called me. He's like, hey, don't do that again. And I was like,
That's
fair enough.
right.
But also, that's kind of ridiculous, right?
I-
Find another way as an attorney to not nitpick with your bills. I never do that, but that's just me.
They'll be getting correspondence from me about that because I just thought that was rude. I'm like, are you kidding me? Here I am trying
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, they're going to defend it as that's the way their practice is set up. Some attorneys
Right.
do that. I'd say a lot of them do that. They don't take any money up front. They don't charge a retainer. They don't charge a fixed fee
Oh no,
or a contingency or a statutory fee. This is everything's hourly bill, phone call, email, thinking about you, hourly bill.
their retainer was $10,000. So they're just taking it from that. So
Yeah.
my question is, that would be a question I'm going to ask attorneys when I go forward. Like, are you going to charge my client for for me helping in the transaction? And do you have any other suggested questions to ask to make sure that we are doing right by our clients?
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I do a lot of free calls with other professionals most of the time.
Mhm.
Even where I take a $10,000 retainer, if I'm billing hourly for a trust administration and I'm on the phone with a realtor, I'm going to charge for that, right? Because that's part of the transaction. I don't get the 3% or the 2.5%. I get my hourly rate. So it's not unethical to do that. But if it's a 5-minute phone call, if it's how you doing, what's going on, right? If half the call is talking about the weather or your sports team or whatnot, don't bill for that, right? And so all that's kind of factored in to what's appropriate for a client or an attorney to bill a client. So it's not always unethical. I wind up doing more of it for free just because it moves the ball forward.
Right. Okay.
But it's not always. I mean, if you're a straight hourly lawyer and that's all you're doing, if you're doing work, you're billing for it. But it's also It can get grandiose, right? It can, I had a client who hired me because her last attorney was literally billing through the nose, and it was somebody with more seniority than me, and they knew better. And so her father had a conservatorship the last couple of years of his life, and she, the daughter, was the conservator. They were the attorney for the conservator, and she went to court. They did a year of this stuff. She had no idea how to evaluate the quality of the work she was getting from this law firm. And then they had their first hearing on the first accounting, and the court looked at what was being petitioned for their fee, and the court, on their own recognizance, which means they brought it up. Client didn't know this was bad. Attorney wasn't going to bring it up. The court looked at that. They're like, you guys are double billing. You have senior partner talking to junior partner, talking to associate, and you're billing 2-3 times for the same conversation in the same law firm. We don't allow that. And we never, and you know that, right? And they literally took an axe, $8,600 in overbilling. That's a lot. And the client basically was like, well, I'm not using you for the probate that's coming up. So she hired me, and I was literally content to close out the estate and let them wrap up the conservatorship. It's not my specialty, right? I stay in my lane. So I was doing the probate, just doing my own thing, waiting for this firm to wrap up the conservatorship paperwork. And they sent the client a bill for like about 10 months, maybe 11 months of conservatorship work. where the client died about 2 months into it, that last period of billing, and they sent her a bill for like $38,000. And I was like, I never personally, like as a matter of policy, I don't intervene in attorney overbilling because I'm not, that's another specialty, right, in ethics and professional counsel who know how to evaluate that. But that shocks the conscience, and I'm not going to tolerate that for my client. I sent them a letter. I said, basically, I intimated our next phone calls with the state bar, so we're not paying that. We negotiated from that down to 8,000. They did a petition. They did some work, so that was the final settlement. So I saved my client 30 grand in overbilling on that one. But that's rare. Usually it's just, people like realtors and financial planners don't understand when attorneys are on the hourly bill, that's the only way they make money. And if they're talking about it, they're taking on liability. The number one thing that most professionals don't know about attorneys is how much liability we have for ourselves if we make a mistake, right? If I give it, I mean, the scare stories of giving law school could, it's called the cocktail advice, right? You go to a cocktail party, you just passed the bar and all your friends and family and aunts and uncles are pestering you for legal advice. And you fresh off passing the seat bar, your head's full of, what they taught you there, and you're spouting off, and someone relies on that and gets themselves in hot water, they sue you. I think that's more of an overbroad scare tactic. But it is known to happen. So that's something that, as an attorney, most people don't understand. I talked to Neen about this, talked to other professionals. Liability is just, in a lot of tax planning, liability is a hot potato. The attorney wants to dump it on the CPA, wants to dump it on somebody else, right? So I'm not ever going to say hourly billing is someone's being frivolous in that. I've seen it frivolous, but I usually give people the benefit of the doubt. Hopefully that answered your question.
No, yes, you did, and you shared a lot of good nuggets there, because I would be appalled dealing. It just makes me wonder how people like that sleep. So I appreciate.
Yeah, I mean the problem there is that that's a firm that they're the opposite of me. I travel light. I'm virtual. They have a big office. They have a lot of staff. They have like CPAs, attorneys. They have like 5 attorneys on staff, CPAs, admin. That's a lot of mouths to feed. It just is. Conservatorships have never been big money. And some people, attorneys, do this, not ethical ones. They submit a giant bill, overstuffing it, knowing the court's going to take an axe to it, and whatever they get left with is more than they would have got had they been ethical. I hate that, but it's part of our industry. It's part of every industry, overpricing, right? And so they created a monster. Like I said, I never armchair quarterback, but this also wasn't the first client I've had that had a problem with them at all. This is about the 3rd client that had a run-in with them on the same issue. And I just let them have it. I said, I told my client, if you're a young attorney at a law school, some of these mistakes are not great, but at least you learn, right? Not to double bill, etc. These people had more seniority than me. These people were advertising themselves as experts. I gave them no grace. I dropped the hammer on them. And that was just shocking to me. And it's hard to shock me. I come in expecting train wrecks, right? They charged for the accounting. It took them like a year to get the accounting together. They're stumbling around, this person talking to that person. Leon, my business partner, is from the South, right? Born in Mobile, Alabama. And so he calls it the fixing to. You're fixing to do this and you're fixing to do that. You're fixing to do a lot of stuff that you're not actually doing, right? You're fixing to do it, which isn't doing, right? So they're doing a whole bunch of legalese, fixing to do the accounting that wasn't the accounting, and it showed up in the bill. And so, I have a company that I use. There's more than one of them. I just have my favorite that does court supervised accounting for courts. And they are specialists. That's literally all they do. It's in the name of their business. We do court supervised accountings, conservatorships, guardianships, trusts, and estates. That's literally it. And that's it. And they get stuff done like for $4,000. And as an attorney, I look at that and say, if I do this project and I bill a client $8,000 for a project that these people can do for $4,000, what value are they getting from me that justifies the double fee? If I'm not faster than them, I'm not better than them, I can't do it any differently than them. And I've used them 2 times in the exact same circumstance, that case and a different case where the law firm was doing the accounting, one with a big firm and a bunch of people, and one with nobody helping them. And they're stumbling around and not getting it done. And I get it, it's overwhelming. But if you have people who are specialists that can wrap the sucker up for a third of the money, let them do it. So that's just my personal preference.
And you guys don't have like a referral type program like we do, where you could, let's say I have somebody in your area that's maybe moved to that area and I could refer them to you.
Right.
Do you guys have that where you know particular attorneys that are good quality, ethical people in different cities or states?
Not everywhere. I mean, ultimately, attorneys can't take a referral fees, so that's like off the top. Although Leon and I have, you know, when we're off work and we're having a beer together, he swears up and down that attorneys are doing it illegally, and I can't convince him because I got no proof, and he's got no proof, but he swears by it. And I've seen a lot of conduct from attorneys that lets me buy into his conspiracy theory on that one. I think he's not far off the mark. All right, David Pinnell. Welcome, David.
Oh, hey.
How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Yeah, how do you keep track of your hours like that? Or do you just keep a note on the side or something?
No. So it depends, right? So I use, various software programs, right? Same with real estate, right? If you want to make money, don't be a realtor, sell crap to realtors, right?
Mhm.
Promise them this, that, and the other, coaching, whatever. And the big one for attorneys is billing software. There's probably 50 different companies, and some are CRMs. I'm a little bit of a Luddite with tech. What I hate is I hate a messy interface. I don't want a bunch of crap that I don't ever use and don't need. So I'm very Spartan in what I use. Nine times out of 10, I'm just using Microsoft Excel. But also, I do 90% of my stuff fixed fee or probate, which is the statutory fee. So that's not an hourly accounting. But when I do trust admins, I use a software to help me track the phone calls and all that. That's like a whole separate technology service providers. There's tons of them.
Okay, nice.
How you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Yeah, I'm actually bugging an attorney right now about
Good.
about a probate. So they are in the middle of getting a deed signed because they did a seller finance deal in between the probate. So, and now they're trying to sell it before the probate's over or it's just concluded. Yeah, it's a mess. But I'm definitely running up the hours. So,
yep.
So
Good deal.
Yeah, man.
Good to see
Thanks.
you.
Yep, you too. But
all righty, Carla.
Hi.
Hi there. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I need to take my 84-year-old mother-in-law to get a living trust done. And my husband and his brother are very busy, so I'll probably be the one doing it. What should I ask? I mean, what do I need to know from the attorney? I've looked up some in her area. We're in Northern California. And I found one that just focuses on the probate and the trust and maybe estate planning, something like that. So I could tell her that's all she's doing. She's not trying to do divorce and all that.
Yep.
So should I go in with my mother-in-law? Should I let her be by herself? Should I?
I mean, this comes up all the time. So I'll give you a couple of speed bullet points. Number one, as an attorney, I represent job one, and for any attorney, but especially in estate planning, identify the client, right? If I'm doing the documents for somebody else, then that's the person I need to be speaking to. I have family there all the time, but it's always at the invitation of the person I will be representing, right? So that's step one. And there's plenty of times when I've asked a realtor, financial professional, even family to step out of the room so I can speak to them, right?
Okay.
If I get again, I've been doing this 20 years. I have a different threshold for nonsense than I did in the beginning of my career, right? If I even get a whiff that this estate plan is being driven by a family member, they're out of my office and I just don't represent them. because it winds up in court and I'm a witness and it's a drag on my time and money. But I do it all the time, right? I'd say, 2/3 of the time there's family there. And then I just ask them to leave when I have to speak confidentially with my client about that. Right. And so if you know that going in, you won't be offended when they ask you to leave. Right.
Right.
So that's bullet point number 1. That's for everybody. Right. Attorneys can only speak to their client. They can't speak confidentially with attorney-client privilege to other people. And that is some weird stuff when you're in family law and estate planning law. It's easy to identify your client when you're representing Apple or Microsoft. It's much worse when it's brother versus sister, right? And they all came to your office on happy terms at the beginning with joint representation. Item 2, and this is, I'm not talking about your situation, but it comes to my mind, and everybody should know this. Ethical rule in California: if somebody else pays for the client, pays my fees for somebody else, the probate or the business professions code, my state bar, the rule is the client has to be okay with that, right? They have to sign off, because again, we're avoiding situations where one family member takes mom and dad out of the hospital, pays for a trust, and the attorney's loyalty is the person cutting the check, trying to strip all that away and make that an impossibility.
Mom has to approve that the sons will be paying for the trust. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, any person who pays the fees of somebody else, the person whose work is being done has to consent to that.
Okay.
To the attorney's satisfaction, right?
Okay.
I've been doing it 20 years. I can figure out 9 times out of 10 when I'm being smoked, right? BS'd as to why they're here and why somebody's paying for it. And again, there are attorneys who will walk that ethical line, and I just go, I could run the other way. I have enough business. I don't want headaches. So, but I mean, I do encourage people to bring their family. I encourage that all the time, as long as people know the ground rules for the way an attorney interacts with their clients.
Okay. That sounds good. The brother is an attorney in San Francisco, so he's just really busy. My husband is also with his job. So we're just trying to.
Number one thing I tell people in estate planning to avoid nonsense later, court litigation, any of that, the entire spectrum, wide open communication and transparency between everybody. It's not practiced enough in our industry. It's better today than it was at the beginning of my career, when it was the whole secrecy model, which is always a train wreck. So I encourage all kind of transparency. When everyone's on the same page, then almost anything can be accomplished. And I even say that on the trust admin after mom and dad died. If you have 4 beneficiaries, they're like, can we do this? Can we do that? Can we sell this to this family member? Whatever. Like, if you have unanimous consent from everybody, you can do nearly anything. If you don't have that, or you have one holdout, they have veto power. Now you got a big problem. So I absolutely do include other family, and I encourage them to talk to their kids, everybody on the same page. Let that transparency flow.
So not everything is confidential with you. Is that what you're saying? Because
yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff at the top level of what estate planning is, what it looks like in that thing that doesn't require secrecy.
Okay.
Right. But when I start getting into specifics of bank accounts, Leon has had this happen. My least favorite is the financial planner referred me, and then the client walks my office like, I hate my financial planner. I want to fire them. And I'm like, oh, why? Dude, you tell me that? Because now they're going to be mad at me. And since you've been working with me for an hour and a half, they think I'm driving you to my person. So could you not?
Yeah.
Call them up and tell them they never want to do that. I just want to fire the guy or ghost them.
Should I ask?
Then I look like the person doing it.
Should I ask if she charges hourly or by the job?
Just ask them how they bill. That's absolutely good question. How do you bill? Is it hourly, fixed? Is it a hybrid they're in?
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. We're running toward the end of our program. We have about 5 minutes, give or take less. I'm going to try to crank through as many of these as I can. Brian Wilson, are you here? Nope. No longer hand up. Vince.
Yes, wait.
Oh,
He is on mute.
Oh,
there we go.
Sorry. Hey,
sorry. I forgot everyone's muted.
All right. Eric,
how you doing?
Real quick, scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being extremely valuable. When I talk with this attorney, do I bring up EstateExec software?
I mean, I would always bring it up, right?
Okay.
The main thing is, like I said, every attorney has their own way of doing business. If that's helpful to them, you know, by all means, right? And so
Okay.
the number one thing is, I've kind of emphasized that through everybody's Q&A. Everyone's different. Every attorney's different. Every law firm's approach to trust admin and what's helpful to them. But of course, bring it up. 10 out of 10, bring it up. 10 out of 10, make them aware that this is a service that you offer and are happy to do so. And that may be great. And they may be like, wow, that's the best thing I've ever heard. Or they may be like, you know what, I prefer to do that myself. Great. At least you asked. Now you know. But more importantly, even in the asking, when they reject you, at least they now know that you're thinking outside the box and that you're a professional and that you're looking at the clients and you're going above and beyond what the standard realtor or investor is doing. So 10 out of 10, always bring that up as an offered service. Whether or not that this particular attorney takes advantage of it, kind of irrelevant. It works. It works to your favor either way, even though they say no.
Thanks, John.
Yep. Who's got hands up? Vince.
Yes, every attorney in my market does probate. Every last one of them. However, there's two that's taken the extra step, one by the state bar, got an endorsement, and another one through another third party. Well, unfortunately, the second one I'm speaking of does your rubber chicken seminars, and I'm not real impressed with that. I want to associate with somebody that knows what they're doing. However, everybody is doing probate. So I got one girl that actually did my estate planning. What do I do with the rest of these guys?
Yep. I mean, honestly, we talked a little bit about this in the past. Bill Gross talks about this a ton. I don't know if you're doing the leads, if you're buying leads from All the Leads or whatever, or whether you're just scraping it from the courthouse or whatnot. Bill does the in-person stuff. He loves going to court, and I laugh every time because as the attorney of 20 years, if I can stay out of court, my day is made, right? I badger the staff to let me know if my case is pre-approved so I don't have to stress, right? So Bill goes in person and sees who's there every day, right? So he's meeting the same people. It's a very small universe, right? Probate attorneys, the court staff. Once you're in there and people know you, you're good to go, right? That's why Bill does that. If you don't want to do it his way, All the Leads or wherever else you're getting your leads from, find out who's doing more than one transaction a month, whose name keeps popping up, right? Figure out what their system is, how they get so much business, and then, you know, if they have their locked in relationships, move on. You know, but it's always the sweet spot, you know, in picking a professional partner. You want somebody who's not brand new in their business because they don't have anything to give you. And you don't want somebody so successful that they have all their people, they're never going to work with you ever, right? That middle spot is 85% of the market. That's where you want to be. It's figuring out the people who you can help them get to that top level, and you can be their one person, right? But find out from the probate list, from the leads, who's probating in your county on the regular basis, and find your way how to work into their universe, right? You know, I say that all the time. In California, you got, 250,000 attorneys or whatnot, and they all say they can do a trust. 100% of them, right? 100% say they can do probate. It doesn't make them estate planners. It doesn't make them probate lawyers. So find out the people who are doing this on the regular. Triangulate your advice. Talk to other realtors. Talk to other CPAs. Talk to financial planners. Who do they love? And that's how you're going to triangulate who the people are you need to be in front of.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Anyone else got questions? All righty, folks. I think that will wrap us up for today. I don't know if McKenna is here, if she wants to chime in.
Hey, John.
Yes.
I have a question.
Chip.
How is it that Chad's driving motorcycles around Norway and you're stuck here doing this?
I take the fifth. No, just kidding.
Thank you so much.
I follow him on Facebook, so I'm in awe of his the travels and the updates and everything else. I love it.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, of course, guys. Anyone else? McKenna, I don't know if you're here, but I don't know if you want to wrap it up, or I'll just say have a great week. And we do this once a month, so I don't know if I'm doing or if one of the other attorneys is doing it next month. But please come back. All right, guys, have a great day.